So the first thing we got to do, our first step, is to get our pattern transferred onto our leather. Once you have it on here, you could take the sides down to help you hold it still. There were two choices of patterns that you could have picked out. So you could see for this video, the example that I'm going to do is the one with the flower and the leaf. But you can do either one and kind of look at these steps, and they'll help you apply to whichever one you choose to do. So I'm going to go ahead and use my pen. And I'm doing around this outside first, and then I'm going to come back in and do the floral. Okay, when I come back in with the floral, I'm going to start with the flower, then I'm going to do the leaf, and then I'm going to fill in all of these scrolls. And when I pull it back to look, it looks like it's all there, so I can take my paper off. You can see my design. So once we have the pattern traced on, our next step is to use our swivel knife to go back over the lines and cut them into the leather. So I'm going to do the same method. I'm going to go around this outside. I'll come to the flower, and then I will come to the leaf. Then fill in with the scrolls. So once we have our pattern cut in, I'm going to start with my cedar tool, and we'll be putting cedars in this flower. So what I'll do is I'll start with one in the middle, and then I'll go around to the outside. The next tool we're going to use is our pear shader, and I'm going to start in the flower. And remember, your pear shader kind of goes where each ripple of the flower is. So in this one, I'm going to go here, and then I'll come off to the left side and do one. And And since it runs into the line on that side, I'm just going to do a little bit, tilting my tool, a little impression. I'm going to work my way around this way. So I'll come to this full leaf here. I'll fit my tool right up into the top of this leaf. And just a tilted one here. And the same on the other side, since our leaf is smaller. And I'll continue around. Now I'll move on to pear shading the leaf. And you can see how the leaf is kind of rippled. So I'll do a pear shade kind of all the way down. So I'm going to start at the top above here. I'm going to rock it backwards so I get just a one impression at the top. And then I'm going to come all the way down, doing just kind of a rocked back look with my tool. So I'm using the fat round part and I'm rocking it backwards. So that I'm only just getting a little bit of the impression. And then I'll do the same on this side. Now I'm going to work on putting a pear shade inside of these scrolls. So here the pear shade will go in this scroll, the fat part. The fat part will be up and the tip will be down. And do the same. I'll go on the inside of the leaf. The fat part will be down this direction and the tip will be up this direction. So the fat part's down towards the flower, the tip is towards the leaf. I'll do one here and this one little leaf next to it. Fat part, the bigger rounder part towards the flower. The tip's kind of pointing towards me. So remember, we got to follow the flow of the petals, the leaves, and the design. And that looks like all of the pear shading. The next tool we are going to use is going to be the veiner tool. And I just have one spot on the leaf. I'm only going to do the outside of it. So remember, when we place our veiner tool, we don't want to go straight across and we don't want to do a full impression. So instead, I take my tip, I place it close to my swivel knife mark, and I rock it and I tilt it up diagonal. Not straight across, tilt it up diagonal. Try to space them as evenly as you can. The next tool I'm going to use is my camouflage tool, and I'm going to come back on the other side and do the camouflage tool. It's the same concept. I only use the side of it, and I am rocking it sideways so that I don't do a full impression. Next, I am going to use my beveler. I'm going to start on this line going all the way around. I'm going to bevel on the inside of it. So my toe, I will place it in my knife, my swivel knife mark. I'm going to put just a little bit of tape on the back of mine to keep it from bouncing around so bad while I'm beveling. So now I'm going to bevel the flower. I'm going to start by going around the outside of each of the petals. Now I'm going to come down here and get these lines. There are actually 3 of them, so there's one line that goes from here to here, and then it's actually like the stem coming out of the flower. And then this little line here, and then the one below is just a leaf coming off of that stem. So I'm going to, on this first line underneath the flower, I'm going to tool on this side of it. And now on the other 2 lines, there's a line that goes across the bottom here. I'm going to tool on this bottom side of it, and then I'm going to tool on the top side of this little line. Now I'm going to come up and do my leaf, and I'm going to be on the outside of all of my lines of my leaf. And I'm also going to be on the outside of the stem in the middle of the leaf. So I'll be on this side and on this side. This side of the stem carries all the way down to here. This side of the stem carries right here. It meets up with this other leaf that comes around. Now we start working on the scrolls that are here, so I'm just going to start with this bigger one on the left. I'll be on the, remember we do the outside so we can make our shape stand out. So I'll be on the top side here, the top side here, and then as it comes around on the bottom side. Now there is a little bitty arc in the middle on the very inside, and so on this arc part of it I'm going to be on this side. On this curve, I'm going to be on this side. That way, as I come around, I'm on the outside of the leaf scroll. So I'm starting like this. The toe of the heel is facing me. The heel of the tool is facing towards the leaf. So now you can kind of see how that scroll is taking shape where it comes around and folds up under itself. So we went from here to there on the inside. Now I'll go on this line that is from here to here, and I'll be on this side. And then on the small one from here to here, I'll be on this side. So I'm on the outside I'll come back and get these. So I'll start with this curve on the outside of this leaf here. This curve starts here. It goes all the way down to here. And I'll be on the outside, so I'll be on this side of it. And then I want to come back and hit the other outside edge, which is this curve that starts here and it ends where it meets this other line. This other line is the long line. So this curve starts here and it ends right here. Now there's a smaller line that goes from here to here. I'm going to be on this side. Okay, move on to our last petal. So I'll start with this curve that goes from the flower all the way down to this other petal of the flower. I'm going to be on the top side of it, that's the outside. So I'll be on this side all the way around. Now we have two more lines. There is a small one here, small arc, and then one right here. Both of those lines I'm going to bevel on this side and on this side towards the flower, that side. And that should complete our beveling. Next, we're going to use our background tool. We're going to background in all of our little areas. So I'm going to start right here, this space between the end of the leaf and the corner of our border. Another space between this leaf, the border, and the scroll. And there's another space on top between this leaf, the border, and the scroll. Remember when you're doing your background to actually put it right up there in that area where you beveled, right against your design, and make sure that you're overlapping so that you get a nice background. Okay. There's this corner that we need to get, just a small piece. On the very inside, there's a triangle area right here. This arced area right here. Now there's a large area right here. There's a small area here in between the leaf and the flower. And then I'm just going to work my way around the flower. So there's this area right here. Now we're going to go to this small area right here. There are two areas at the bottom. Here's this leaf that's right here that we beveled. And so there's a space on the bottom side of it. And then there's a little space on the top side between it and the flower. Bevel both of those. And our last spot is this little triangle right here. Our tooling is done. Now it is time for the decorative cuts. I'm going to spray mine with just a little bit of water. It doesn't need a lot of water, just a little bit to soften up those fibers some. I like to have it a little bit damp when I come back in to do my decorative cuts. It makes the leather a little easier to cut. However, if you have it too wet, then as it dries, that cut will lift back out. So there's a balance there that you have to find. Okay, so now that some of that moisture is absorbed back into the leather, I'm ready to do my decorative cuts. I'm going to start here in the flower. So to gauge your decorative cuts and where you're going to place them, I like to start with the cut that I'm going to make in the center of each petal, because it's my longer, bigger cut. And then from that, you can look and see how much room is left in the petal to do small ones on each side. And so then you just kind of determine what flows and what fits. So I'm going to start in this one first, and I'm going to do my bigger, longer one in the middle. I'm going to push harder when I start out, and then less pressure as I come to me. So decorative cuts are kind of hard for the camera to pick up, but pretty much what I did is I did my long one in the middle, and then I have about 2 small ones on each side. All except for this petal, since it's a little bit bigger, I had 3 small ones on each side. Now I'm going to come and do the decorative cuts up here in the leaf. On the outside, I'm just going to do small lines from the edge of the leaf coming in towards the stem. On the inside of the leaf, I'm going to make a long one that follows this shape, kind of from here to here, and then 2 short ones that go out. On this leaf, I'm going to do a longer one following the edge, and then a small one inside. I went ahead and did some small short lines going down the rest of the stem. Here, I'll do one and then some short ones. Here, I'll do the same where I follow the outside curve of the leaf, a small one underneath it, and then some short lines going down the stem. So I'll kind of start about here where the curve and the border kind of come together. And I'll follow the curve of the outside. I'll come back and do a small one. And then I'll have some short ones. The same with the curve of this petal. I'll have one that kind of starts close to the flower, give a little space. I'll follow the outside till about halfway or so. Small one below it, and then a couple lines down. So our tooling and our decorative cuts are finished. The next step is to set it aside and let the moisture dry completely out of it. We'll work on tooling the money clip while we let it dry. So here's my piece for my money clip. I already have it cased. I've put some tape on the back to help keep my leather from stretching while tooling. If you look up close, you can see that there's lots of spots in this piece of leather. So whenever we're in workshops together, you hear me talk about always choosing leather that's real clean and nice to start our project with. So if this was one of your guys' pieces for the fair, then we would cut a new piece because this one's not very clean and very nice. But for me to do as practice for you guys, it will be okay. So this one, since it was a purchased kit, it actually came with your pattern, and it has a what we call a tooled picture. This is your guide. So that's an extra bonus of something that you can look alongside of when we're tooling. This is the one that I'm going to choose to do. There was another pattern with some oak leaves, and you can choose to do that one as well and just follow the picture, and it will tell you where to put all your items. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out this so that I can trace it onto my piece of leather. Okay, so once you have your pattern centered, if you need to take some tape and go ahead and tape it on the sides going around back, you can. If you're like mine and the paper doesn't go all the way to the edge of the leather, I don't recommend taping that direction because when you pull your tape off, it'll leave marks on your leather. But on the sides, where it goes all the way to the end, then that would be a good place to tape. So I'm going to start with my pin, and I'm just going to go ahead and trace. Once you've traced it on there, you can go ahead and cut the lines with your swivel knife. So now that we've cut in our design, our first tool that we're going to use is our cedar tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow these dots that I made when I traced the pattern from the outside and then work my way inside. So the next tool I'm going to use is my pear shader. And you can refer to your image if you need to look and see where we are going to put the pear shade at. But it'll be pretty similar to what we've been doing. We'll pear shade the flower, the leaves, and then these small leaves. So when I start in my flower, I'm going to start in this base first. So I'll be putting a pear shade here and a pear shade here. Now I'll use my pear shade inside each of these curves of the big leaves. And on this one, I'm not doing a full impression. I'm just kind of rocking it back a little and just getting the end, the big round part of the tool. Now I'll put a pear shade here and here. The next tool we're going to use is our camouflage tool. And our picture shows that we're going to use the camouflage tool here in the stems. I'm going to start here in the top part of the stem. So I'm probably not going to do a full impression because my tool is too big and it will go outside of the lines. So I'm just going to rock it back. And as I go down the stem, my impressions will get lighter and lighter. And I'm going to overlap them slightly. And now the stem here under the leaf. Alright, same for the other side. Next we'll use the veiner tool. And we'll be using it on the outside curve of the leaf. So I'm going to get my tool, the corner of my tool right up here next to my swivel knife cut, tilt it upwards at an angle, and make sure that I evenly space them as I go up. So just the same, whenever I bevel, I'm going to start with my flower, big leaf, and then come back into the other stems and leaves. And remember, we're going to go around the outside. So I'm going to start with this wide part, the base of the flower, and then I'll go petal by petal. You'll notice on the leaf, I beveled on this side of the vein, the side that has the veiner tool on it. Next, we'll work on beveling the inside stems and leaves. I'm going to start with this thing in the center, and it's just beveling all around the outside of it. Always make sure that you're checking your leather as you go. If you feel like you need to spray it to keep it moist. But always after you spray it, you've got to let some of the natural color come back through. So it has to always sit for just a little bit. Whenever you do spray your leather, since we've already got it cased, the only thing we're doing is just keeping some moisture in it. So when you go to spray it, you're only spraying it like with 1, 2, 3 spritzes. You don't want to get it too wet. We've already got it that way when we cased it the first time. So if you spray it too much, the longer you're going to have to sit here and wait for that moisture to absorb in before you're tooling again. So you only need to spray it just a few times. So now I'm going to bevel on the outside of this stem that leads up to the flower. So I'm going to bevel this long line on this side and then on this side so that I'm on the outside of the stem. So next I'll do this little leaf that's right here. So I would just be on the outside, going over the top right here, and then coming down. Now I'm going to do this leaf up here. The same thing on the outside, so over the top, and then on this side coming down. And now what we have left is the stem coming out of the leaf. And there are two lines. So there's one here and then one here. So we're going to be on the outside of each of those two lines. Now that all of the beveling is done, it is time to background. You can look on our picture and you can see all of the little areas that we have to background. So this pattern, unlike some of the others, it is kind of open. It doesn't really end. So if you look in here, we have to background this area and come out by the leaves and the flower. But since it doesn't end, we just kind of decide our own ending point. So I'll background until about right here. I won't go all the way to the tip of the leaf and the end of the flower. I'm going to stop short about right here. But otherwise, all of this background, there's this little bitty space between the petal and the leaf that you get. And then this space up here. And then stop about there. For me, it's helpful to place the edge of my background tool right up here against the bevel. And then if I need to go in and fill in anything in the middle, I can. But that's easier than trying to place it down in the middle. Try to get the edge of your tool onto the bevel. So you can see where I stopped right there. The next place is the kind of the same. We background this little area right here. And then we also need to get a little bit right in here. So I'm going to background to about right in here. And next is this little area right here. And then just a little bit right here. So now I'm going to repeat those right on this side. Now it's time for our decorative cuts. And that's all of the swivel knife cuts. Congratulations, you finished tooling your money clip. Now we will let it dry completely, let all of the moisture dry out. So that means hours, not minutes. And once everything is completely dried, then we'll come back and we will talk about putting our finish on. My pieces are now all dry, so we're going to move on to the finishing and antiquing process. So my coaster that I made with you guys, I did that at the office, and now I'm at my house doing this video. So I don't have the coaster that matches you guys, so I'm just going to use this one for an example. But you should have your 4 coasters for your practice board, 5 if you're going to go ahead and do a finish on your sample one that we made. You should have 2 pieces of your knife sheath. You should have the front piece and then another piece that's the back. And then you should have your piece for the money clip. So in your kit, you should have a dauber and your tan coat. In your small containers, the kind of clear looking liquidy one is called tan coat. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start with our coaster first. So if you take your dauber, stick it in your tan coat till your dauber's coated, and then if you just kind of rub it on the side to get the excess drippiness off. I'm going to start on the edges, so that way if I start on here, then when I go to do the edges, I have to touch this with my fingers after I just put stuff on it. So I'm going to do the edges first. I'm going to go around it, and now I'm going to put my tan coat. So I'm just going to put it on using a circular motion. It doesn't hurt if you get it on your fingers. If you don't want to get it on your hands, you can use some gloves. But it just goes on in a circular motion. Make sure that you get into all of your impressions, all of your swivel knife cuts. And when you've got it good, then your coaster is finished, and we set it aside to let the tan coat absorb and dry. So when your coasters, they can only have a clear finish on them. So after we put the tan coat on them and they dry, they are completely done, because all they can have is a clear finish. So we set that aside and let it dry. Now I'm going to move on to my knife pouch. And this has 2 steps to it. We put the tan coat on it, let the tan coat dry, and then we'll come back and we'll put an antique on it. So go ahead with your tan coat. If you need to dip your dauber in again, go ahead. After you've done your 4 coasters, you might need a new dauber, so there should be plenty in your kit if you need to grab you a new dauber. The same thing, kind of circular motions. Don't forget the edges. Make sure that you get down in all of the cuts, all of the impressions, get down in that background area really good. If you need to get more on your dauber, that's fine. You can be generous with the tan coat. You just don't want to get too much where you just have this big old puddle of tan coat sitting on it. But you want to get enough on your dauber to start with so that you can move it around. Then I just kind of go over it, make sure that I got everything. And I'll set that aside. And move on to my money clip. Same thing. Okay, so I've applied tan coat to all of my items. So again, in front of you, you should have 4 coaster samples. And once you have the tan coat on and once the tan coat dries, then those samples are completely done. You can set them aside and they're ready to go on your practice board. You should have 2 pieces of your knife pouch that you did tan coat on, the front, and then the other piece without any tooling for the back, and then your money clip. So your coasters, when they're dry, they're done, ready for the board, set them aside. Your knife pouch pieces and your money clip pieces, they still have one more application to them, the antique process. But we need to let the tan coat dry, which is usually 30 minutes to an hour. I like to let mine set an hour to be on the safe side at least. And make sure that it's not tacky before we move on to the antique process. Now my tan coat has completely dried and it's time to apply our antique finish. So you'll need your dauber. You can see that I've put a newspaper down just because I don't want to get the antique stain on anything. And I'm also wearing a glove on one hand that I'll be touching the leather with so that I don't get stain on my fingers. It does eventually wash off though, so. Inside of one of your little containers, you have what we call antique paste. The color that you have is Sheridan Brown, and we're going to apply it the same way that we apply the tan coat. Another thing that you're going to need is a paper towel, because after we put the paste on, we have to wipe it off, so we need a paper towel to wipe with. So I have my paper towel nearby. I will get some paste on my dauber, and I'm going to apply it the same way. I don't want to start on the edge with my paste because I can't make it spread. So I'll kind of start here off the edge from a little bit, and as I go in a circular motion, then I can spread that paste around. If you need to get more on your dauber, then that's perfectly fine. This is really important. This paste, this antique that we're applying, it's what gets down into your impressions and makes them darker so that they stand out. So it's really important that you get into all of the swivel cuts, all of your impressions, all of your backgrounding areas. That's what creates that nice contrast in your project. Okay, once you're sure that you've gotten it everywhere, then you can use your paper towel and wipe off the excess on top. And there we go. So now you can kind of compare the difference of once we apply antique. You could see in your pear shades and your swivel knife cuts. the color and the darkness that it makes. Okay, so then it's time, go ahead to your other pieces. If you see anywhere that you didn't think got paste in it, then you can go ahead and go back over it. And now we have to let our paste set and dry on top of our leather before we go on to the next step, which will be stitching and assembling. So now that your antique is dry, you can go ahead and start assembling your projects together. And I'm not going to go through the full assembly on video with you, but we will kind of talk about how to get started. So on your knife pouch, one of the hardest things is going to be getting the holes lined up on the front piece and the back piece, getting them lined up just right when you glue it down. So one of the things that I recommend that you do is you can take your two needles and you can put your front and your back piece together and kind of stick your needles through the holes to make sure that they are lined up. And then you can take your glue and your brush and pull it back and paint your glue in there and hold it together. And then you can then take one needle out here and put it down in the bottom if you need to, and that just will kind of help line the holes up while the glue dries so that you make sure that you can stitch easier. Now remember, when you're gluing, this is a knife pouch, so your knife is going to slide into the opening right here. So when you glue, you only need to apply glue on the outer edge, not across the top from wherever your tooling is. You're going to leave that part open and all of this middle open. So you'll apply glue on the outer edge going around, and then you'll apply glue in this area here to help hold it together while you stitch. So the method that you want to stitch is the running stitch, and you'll do, I like to use two needles. You have a piece of string in your kit. So when you thread your string on, what I like to do is thread an end on one needle. And once I have it threaded on, I like to bend it back and give it a twist. And that'll help it stay on my needle. And I'll do the same to the other side. Fold it back against itself and twist it. So the place that you want to start stitching on your knife pouch is right here. You'll start stitching here, you'll go up and around, and then you'll end by stitching over here. So to get started, I will thread one needle through so that I have a needle on each side. And I'm going to pull them so that the threads are even in length. And then I'm ready to begin. So in order to do the running stitch, I always start on this side, the front side that I've tooled on, and I take my needle and I go down through the next hole. And then the one that was on the bottom, I take it and I will go up through that exact same hole. And what that does is it creates, pull it tight, what that does is it creates one stitch on the top and then one stitch on the bottom. So then I'll do the same thing. I always start on the top, going down through the hole and pull it, and then I will use the one that's on the bottom, not the same one that just went down, the one that's already on the bottom, and I will go up through that exact same hole. If you have trouble pulling your threads through, it can be helpful to have a pair of pliers so that after you stick your needle through, you can grab it with your pliers and it pulls through the hole pretty easily. The bottom one comes back up, grab it with my pliers, and it pulls through, and I pull all the tension out after every stitch. So you'll continue that going all the way around, and you'll end down here on this other side. And to end, all you need to do is back stitch, which means doing the exact same thing backwards through the next 2 or 3 holes. And then all you have to do is take your scissors and cut it off as close to the leather as you can. And then your knife pouch will be completed. You'll do the same type of stitching on your money clip. Yours that you have already has the holes pre-made, but your kit came with the instructions, so I'm not going to go through the assembly with you because they're pretty good instructions to follow. But if you do have any questions, make sure that you give me a call. I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks. Bye.